right, so we've finished up with the whole autopsy section. Now I'm just going to explain what the registry is, and then I'm going to show you a last few questions in Registry Explorer using that information. So the registry is essentially a maze of configuration files that Windows uses behind the scenes for everything that it does. And like those applications we saw earlier that were not written by Windows programmers and instead had their own INI configuration files in them, you can choose not to use some of the registry setup that Windows has. However, in the end, it's still going to be using a lot of different registry values along the way. The registry holds on to system settings like how often the computer sleeps, your password requirements, basically everything that you can set up in settings. If you think about all the other things that Windows does to try to make your life easier too, the registry is responsible for those. Things like auto-filling the Windows Explorer locations you've typed before. Those things are stored in something called an MRU list, which stands for most recently used, and there are all different kinds of MRUs all over the registry. The registry is located at C Windows System 32 config, and I'll show that to you later. There are 5 main important hive files there, and those are what's stored on the disk when it is dead, when it's shut down and all that's left is on the disk. But when the system is running, it gets loaded into the system's RAM under these 2 hives, which are called HKey current user, or HKCU, and HKLM, which is HKey local machine. And those keep track of settings for the user itself or the machine itself, which is pretty much what it sounds like. There is one file in a different location that is called ntuser.dat, and we've already seen it come up a few times. It's under C, users, and then the username, and that gets loaded into memory as the HKCU, which is going to contain system and software keys. HKLM, on the other hand, is created from the Hive files that are under that config folder from earlier. So the organization of the registry goes hives, which are not going to be present here because this is not a live system, and that's HKCU and HKLM, and then keys, which are the default SAM, security, software, and system keys, which we'll see later. Those keys have a bunch of subkeys, which you'll see over here in this tree. And each subkey has subkeys as well. You can see how many values they've all got. And each of those values has data, and data can come in different formats. So you can consider it like the value is a question and the data is an answer to that question. This one is probably not the best example, but if we look under here, we've got values like logon username here, and then you can see the data is Mr. Evil. So if that's the question, that's the answer there. The data can come in different formats, which is under value type here. regSZ is just an ordinary ASCII encoded string. Reg binary is what it sounds like. It's a 0 or a 1 to let you know whether something is on or off, although it can be a larger binary number as well. And then reg dword, which stands for double word. If you know about hex and words and double words, then that's a 32-bit value, and it's usually an integer. It's not raw binary, it's encoded text, which can be an important thing to know. There are some other locations, kind of like ntuser, that are registry-ish. I've got them listed on my text walkthrough, but probably the only one you're really going to need to know about here is LNK files, which is essentially Windows leaving itself a little shortcut to get to recently used files of its own. And those are going to contain timestamps that tells you when those were used and what the location of those files are, which is going to come in pretty handy. Also prefetch files, which we'll talk about when we go back over question 8. All right, so let's just go ahead and extract these hive files now. As I mentioned earlier, they are under the C drive Windows, System 32, followed by config. And here they are. So the main ones that we're going to get are all at the top here: default SAM security software system. Don't worry about these other ones. The logs can come in handy in other cases, but we're not really using them right now. So just right click, extract files, and because we're going to be using these on another program that shows you the full file path, I recommend making just a short path to name these under so that you can easily see the names of the hive and they're not far off to the right. You'll see what I'm talking about, but I created a folder just directly under my C drive called short path, and I put all of these into it. Next up, we will get the intuser.dat hive file as well, and that's going to be under C documents and settings up here, and then we go to that user, Mr. Evil, and here is our intuser.dat, same thing, extract that one. All right, now we're going to do a quick rundown of how to get and use Registry Explorer. You'll find it on this Eric Zimmerman GitHub website. You can probably just Google it too, and when you scroll down, you'll find it down here. Just download it, and when you unzip it, you will find that there are actually 3 executables under it. You use this one, Registry Explorer, at least the way I'm doing it. This one gives you a command line type of format. I actually don't remember at the moment what the other one does, but we don't have to worry about that. Once you get it running, it'll open up here and you'll see that you don't have anything to work with yet. We'll load up those hives in a second, but first I just want to show you that you have the option to change your skins here. And personally, I prefer this Visual Studio 2013 Dark because in addition to being a dark mode, it uses a range of different colors there, so it's a lot easier to distinguish the different types of data and columns and such, and that's actually really useful when you're analyzing, which is why I bothered mentioning it. So it's got 3 windows here. Well, actually, first let's load these hives. So file load hives is how we get here, and then we'll just go to our short path folder that we made here, and there's everything. You can just click, hold shift, click at the bottom, click open, and you'll get all of them at once. So we've got our tree window on the left, and you can see it's populating here, and there's our hives. This is why I said to use a shorter path, because otherwise this name intuser.dat would be somewhere over here, and you'd have to open this column way up to see it. So this proto.hiv is going to be the one that we actually worry about. Don't worry about all these unassociated deleted record things right now. Not really important. It is going to show you the keys and all of their subkeys just in a tree format like you'd expect. Next, we've got the values window over here, and it gives you the values of whatever key you've highlighted. You can see here we've got number of values and number of subkeys. So notice there's no arrow next to this console one. That's because there are no subkeys like it says, but there are 31 values, and if we click on it, we'll see them over here. If it did have subkeys like this one, you don't see the values of any of the subkeys in the values window. So just keep that in mind, that there might still be a whole lot more of them to worry about that you just haven't opened up yet. Now, if you wanted to do a little bit of analysis with these, like let's say you wanted to see everything that had these different value types up here, you can drag it up to the top, actually into this little column here. And now we've got it grouped by these 2 different types, the D word and reg SZ type. and you can open those up and see what different values fall into those. So that's pretty useful, and you can always just put that back when you're done with it. Next up is the viewer window down here. So you just highlight one of these values and you can see it over here. It gives you the name, the type, the actual value, and its raw hex version. And then there you can view it more like a hex viewer. So that should all be fairly familiar at this point. Next up, we've got bookmarks. So you're going to see that there are 18 right now, and they're all under common. Those are the ones that come with it. This is going to change because it only shows you these bookmarks based on which root key you're in. So I'm in into user.dat right now. If I scroll down and go to security, it's only got these 4. So keep that in mind. You have to navigate by which of these root keys you're in. Next up, there's also this available bookmarks tab up here. And that one is just going to show you all of the bookmarks that are there. There's no parent keys or anything, so there's no having to open anything else up to get to them. This is just one of the bookmarks here and so on. But if you did want to see where this is actually located, you can look at the bottom left here, and there's its full path, so you don't have to go hunting for it later. In the event that you do have to hunt for something, there is a quick search up here. So let's just say I want to look for an MRU most recently used list like we talked about, and there's basically all of them. So that's real easy to use, but there's also a more in-depth find tool up here under tools, find, and that is going to allow you to specify time ranges, key names, well, specify time ranges, but also decide whether you're searching through key names or just the value data or the names of values or the slack. You can also search using regular expressions, which is useful if you're getting real technical. So let's just jump into actually doing the questions now.